So, good day. Our discussion for this session is about phylum Echinodermata. So, the members of the phylum include starfishes, brittle stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, sea lilies, and feather stars. These organisms are radially symmetrical with no head end, yet they are more complex than the Nidarians in that they have three cell layers and the xylem, and most of the species under this phylum can form a temporary brain that coordinates locomotion. The size also of the organisms under the phylum vary. The starfish can range from 10 millimeters to 1 meter in diameter. Some sea cucumbers are as much as 2 meters in length, and there are around 7,000 species that have been described under this phylum, and all of them are marine. While the number of species is not that many, echinoderms are extremely numerous as individuals in unpolluted seas and deep water. Um, so let's look at the different characteristics of echinoderms. If we look at the water vascular systems of echinoderms, we can see that it has a central coelomic cavity that transports seawater within the animal and bears the tube feet. The tube feet are thin-walled extensions of the epidermis lined with mesoderm and connected with the radial canals. So, in starfishes, for example, seawater enters through a sieve plate and passes by way of a central stone canal to a ring canal and then along radial canals and into the tube feet. So the tube feet functions as um, for respiration, as echinoderm skin is impermeable. Tube feet can also be for food collecting and also as acting as sensory tentacles and for locomotion. So the walking tube feet of sea stars or starfishes and sea urchins are connected to an ampulla, which is a water reservoir that can be squeezed to extend the tube feet. Although not all can be extended at once, but this can be used to adhere to the substrate, and the suction mechanism can be used in a sea urchin to move around. How about the endoskeleton of echinoderms? So underneath the epidermis of the echinoderm are perforated calcareous ossicles. So they are formed by mesodermal cells, and each ossicle is a single crystal and is separated from its neighbors by a living tissue. So this system is very different from the characteristic of hard skeletons in other animals where crystals are embedded in an organic matrix, but again, this forms a hardened material that supports the body of the organism. In terms of the nervous system, um, it's just a diffuse nerve network, um, condensed in places into nerve fibers, but there is no brain present in the organism. This suggests a degree of coordination, but it's no greater than that of the Nidarians. In terms of mutable connective tissue, the connective tissue of echinoderms is capable of rapid and reversible change in stiffness, often within seconds under nervous control. The mechanism for this would be the change in the viscosity of collagen fibers in the connective tissue caused by ionic movements that alter weak interactions between extracellular macromolecules within the organism. So, what are the other characteristics of echinoderms? The pentaradiate symmetry is observed. So, radial symmetry is a legacy of the evolution of echinoderms. Um, this is closely related to the feeding methods that the organism is capable of. In terms of the transport of food and removal of waste, the water vascular system does this for the organism. There are amoebocytes in the xylem branches that can carry metabolites to any of the permeable area of the skin of the organism where gaseous exchange also occurs. It also exhibits deuterostome development. So we have cleavage being radial and regulative. The plastopore becomes the anus and the mouth opens elsewhere, and the mesoderm is derived from the gut wall as the coelomic cavities are formed by a series of outpouches. In terms of coelomic cavities, echinoderms are unsegmented, hence the coelom is not divided along a body axis as what we find in annelids, but it exists as a number of separate divisions persisting from embryological origins. Okay, so let's look at the different groups of echinoderms. So we have the crinoids or organisms belonging to class Crinoidea. Uh, the organisms under class Crinoidea are also called feather stars. Um, if we will look at the morphology of crinoids, so you will see here that they are made up of a corona and a stalk or crown or corona here. And this is the stalk. The stalk has a root-like structure here called cirri or hold fast, which functions for attachment. Although those organisms or species that are free swimming have no stalk altogether. So these ones are the ones that are sessile, the ones having the stalk. And again, at the end of the stalk, you have the holdfast or the cirri. The corona is a box-like structure composed of tegmen and a calyx. So this is the calyx, and this is your tegmen. Radiating from it are the pinnate arms or branchiae. So you can see here the arms. Okay, or the branchiae. So the tegmen is actually the inner surface here of the calyx. This is the calyx, the um, purple part. So the inner surface is your tegmen. The dorsal part, the under part is the calyx or the ventral part. And then here are your pinnae or branchiae. So they are the oldest surviving group of echinoderms. Sedentary suspension feeders with upwardly facing mouths, and the arms and stems are stiffened by ossicles and mutable connective tissue. Now, these are examples of this one has the stalk, which is sessile. Yes, the non-motile, and then these are the ones that are motile. So you have here some different species of um, feather stars. Okay. Next, we have um, class Stellariidea. These are rayed echinoderms with pentameric body form. And under class Stellariidea, we have two subclasses. We have Asteroidea and Ophiuroidea. So asteroids are your starfishes or sea stars, and it constitutes a large class with around 2,000 species. They are predators or scavengers. Some starfish feed by sucking animals into the stomach, but others avert their stomachs as they feed. Typically, a starfish grips the two halves of a bivalve. So maybe you've seen videos of this. The starfish grips the two halves of a bivalve shell with the tube feet, suckers, and pulls the shells have apart until they can insert their everted stomach through the tiny gap now between the shells of the bivalve. The bivalve is then digested inside its shell and sucked into the starfish. But there are some species that are suspension feeders using mucus and cilia. Now, for asteroids, walking on tube feet involves the alternate attachment to and detachment from the substratum. So there are also videos, maybe you have seen about how they move about. The soft tube feet can adapt to rough or smooth surfaces, and secretions by two glands in the tube feet give rapidly varying adhesion as the starfish walks. So, what are these substances? You have the adhesive, acidic carbohydrates and proteins that alternate with substances of different ionic content that prevent adhesion. So, um, this would allow the organism to move, not stick, and then remove the tube feed from the substrate. So here is also the cross section of the starfish ray, and you can see the different parts, no, of the starfish. So you have here the number two is your calcareous um plate, and then the coelom, of course, would be the space inside. Number three, your dermal branchiae. Hepatic ceca is here for digestion of food. What else? Pedicellariae that can also capture food for the organism. So tube feet number nine here. And then this is detached pedicellaria, how it looks like. So they are small pincer-like structures that you find on the surface of your sea stars. So they can, aside from capturing small food items, they can also be for defense or for cleaning the body surface. Now here on the right is the larva that is possessed by um, starfishes. So we call the larva the Bipinaria larva. So this is the first free swimming larval stage in the development of starfishes and maybe some other echinoderms. So what we can observe here is that it is bilaterally symmetrical. So this would have ciliary bands that enable the movement of the organism and the feeding as well. And well, after the bipinnaria larva, there are other stages that it metamorphoses to before becoming an adult. So this is what we call the brachylaria larva, no, the next form from the bipinnaria larva. So distinct for the Arceroidea. And then these are the different species of starfishes that we have in the lab. So there are, so you have here Uh, the blue one, which is Linkia, pero hindi ko alam kung anong kulay niya sa lab. Then you also have here your Acanthaster or the crown of thorns. And then here on the below we have Colcita. And then Ardoa here on the right. So here you have there are common names, for example, for the species. So I hope you will be familiar with it. Your ancestor is ecologically important because um, it can actually feed on corals, stony polyps of your corals. So when you have a lot of these present, it can wipe out a reef community. Okay, so the other subclass for Stellariidea, we have Ophiuroidea. Ophiuroids are where brittle stars belong to. Mm. It's another large class, uh, maybe also around 2,000 species. They have very much more hard skeleton than asteroids, but although they are stellate in form, the arms are clearly marked off from the disk at the center. Most of the arm consists of central muscles surrounded by ossicles, which are able to move on each other and give the arms great flexibility. Hence, they can also be called serpent stars. So the ossicles are often called vertebrae, quote unquote, and no other invertebrates have such vertebrate-like structure. So most of uroids resemble asteroids in being active carnivores, but their methods of feeding and locomotion are different. There's also no ambulacra, and the organism respires through organs called bursa or internal sacs. There are two of these per arm. Yeah, so this is an example of your brittle star. This is macrophthiotrix. So this is very common in the Philippines. We can see that in our beaches. The body of the organism is usually covered in spines, and the pedicellariae are very important in removing settling organisms on the surface. So, yeah, what else? Next, we have class Echinoidea for the where the sea urchins belong to. So these are organisms which can be classified as browsing herbivores, and they are slow moving. Um, the speed of the organism, movement of the organisms vary partly according to their habitat. For example, a larger sea urchin can move faster on a horizontal surface but uses more energy in moving on a vertical one. So echinoids, as you observe, are spherical or egg-shaped with the axis between the oral and the boral surfaces much extended. So among echinoderms, the body is encased in fixed lattice of ossicles, which may be fused to form a rigid test, no, or covering of the entire body. And the body is covered in spines. So here are the examples of your echinoids. So we have Heteranthrotus here, and you have the diadema, Echinotrix diadema, which is also very common in the beach. So in my childhood, going to the beach, I usually find this species, and I'm always very much afraid because of the very long spines. And then here you have Toxonutes, Nustes, Toxonustes, and here you have Trypnustes. So they're also very common in the beaches in the Philippines. Uh, we also have sand dollars belonging to this class. So sand dollars have dorsal ornamentations referred to as petaloids, with functions in assisting in respiration. Now, the larva of echinoids are called the Proteus larva. So they usually feed by scraping seaweeds from rocks with an elaborate structure of movable plates called Aristotle's arms. And if you like eating by the beachside and there are uh, sea urchins. So they give you the gonads, and it's a delicacy for the locals or the natives. And then we have class Holothuroidea, or the sea cucumbers, comprised comprised by about 900 species. They are secondarily bilaterally symmetrical, lying on one side with an elongated body axis between the mouth and the anus. And the endoskeleton is very much reduced, right? When you hold it, parang there's not much, very much hardened material, but there is, but reduced, um, leaving a muscular body wall with a few embedded ossicles but without spines or pedicellariae. There's only one gonad, and the respiratory trees, branches of gut taking oxygenated seawater, are characteristic of the group. So here is your example. So you have the Synapta and Ophiodosoma. Hmm. Some of these organisms are deposit feeders. Um, A group of anterior tube feet can form long buccal tentacles that are held out as a net to gather food from the sand. Locomotion is slow by worm-like wriggling of the muscular body wall, or there may be locomotor tube feet in the ambulacral grooves on the underside of the body that allows movement. What's unique about holothuroids is that when pursued by predators, um, they immobilize them by extruding a mass of very sticky blind ending tubules, or may break off the internal organs and leave them in the path of the predator. So this is achieved by complete slackening of the ground substance of the mutable connective tissue, uh, so that the rest of the body of the organism escapes and it's able to actually regenerate its viscera. Now the last group is Concentricycloidea, which were discovered only in 1986 in the deep seas of New Zealand. Uh, and then a second species of the group, was found in the Caribbean. So, Concentricycloidea are at present considered to constitute a separate class from Asteroidea. They superficially resemble medusae, but of course, what would separate this from the Nidarian would be the water vascular system with two connected concentric rings, one of which bears tube feet. So here is the sea daisy, uh, which we know concentric cycloidea as also. So ito yung example. So you have Xyloplax, which is the one of the species known for this particular class of echinoderm. Now here are the names of the uh, larvae for echinoderms, which are all ciliated, feeding, and swimming also. So they're considered planktons as larvae. So for Asteroidea, we call the larva bipinnaria larva. Ophiuroideans, Ophiopluteus. Chinoids, Echinopluteus. For Holothuroidea, auricularia. And for crinoids, we call the larva Doliolaria. Okay, so I hope you'll be familiar with the different species that are in the exercise sheets, and also the descriptions here in the discussion, and also the exercise sheet. So that ends the lecture for the post lab for Echinodermata.